Ian, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Janelle.
I remember when we first spoke, I thought you were from Newfoundland first, just from the
Yeah.
accent. And as you got talking, and because people from Ireland talk so fast, I was catching only like 2 out of 5 words. And I'm like, oh no, he's from Ireland. Well, Ian, one question I always like to ask my guests to get them started is, first of all, what's one thing you're struggling with currently? And then secondly, what's something that you've overcome recently?
I'm struggling with the lockdown a little bit, to be honest with you. It's going on a little bit too long, whereas I've been keeping very busy and I hadn't really noticed it, but now I am starting to notice it. So I'm just struggling with not seeing people outside the 5 kilometers because a lot of people we have a 5 kilometer kind of restriction and we're not allowed to leave 5 kilometers of our home. So that will be a struggle, and it's a struggle for everybody. I did for the first time for my birthday last week. I left my 5 kilometer zone, but people are breaching the thing all the time. These regulations, they're a bit extreme. So that's a struggle. And I mean, in general, like what am I overcoming? Well, in the last 4 weeks, I've given up cigarettes. So I'm trying,
Really?
yeah.
How? We're in a lockdown.
Yeah, I know. So now I'm just like teetotaler, don't drink, don't smoke. I've tried before, obviously I was vaping, the vape. I was on the e-smoke for a
Vapes
long.
are worse, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're more affordable and the smoke is cleaner, like, because it's vape, but you're doing it all the time to get the same amount of nicotine out.
Yeah.
And because I'd given up drinking drugs and everything else, I really kind of, the vape was my crutch. So I'm really thrilled. I have to be honest as well that in the last, I suppose, 2 weeks ago, so say I'm off them, I say about 3, 4 weeks, since the start of March, more or less, that I did have one cigarette. And before I've had one cigarette, like, I was stressed. That's what I'm putting down to. But I've had one cigarette when I'm after being off them for, say, months. And then I end up back on them. I just said, look, a bit of a slip. So I have one cigarette, so no big deal. And I'm still off them. So I'm very happy.
I mean, this is a hard time to be quitting our vices. Do you have any vices left?
No, nothing, just kind of procrastination is just one thing. It's, I suppose, not advice, but I mean, it's just one bad
Bad
habit.
habit.
Yeah.
Well, you're in
So
school right now for psychotherapy. So are you
yeah.
procrastinating on your
Oh
studies?
yeah, I have an assignment due tomorrow. There's my last bite. It's the sugary berry
Yeah,
juice.
this sugary juice thing that you drink.
Yeah. But no, I guess it's not just a personal struggle, but a lot of people I'm talking to who are on different courses and who are on my course are just struggling with procrastination and just finding it hard to focus. And I guess it's due to the kind of the situation we all find ourselves in. Even though people might have a little bit of extra spare time on their hands, it's just hard to stay focused. And like I'm trying a bit of meditation, I'm getting out and walking, I'm doing all the right things. Sometimes I find that I could be sitting at the laptop screen for 3 hours and then I might have, 3 slides done and about 20 tabs open and, I'm on WhatsApp, I'm on Facebook, I'm on everything but doing the assignments. So now it's kind of to turn the phone onto do not disturb mode and just stay, look, for half an hour, going to do the assignment and do nothing else. I just find I work better under pressure. Like I try do the whole
A
thing,
lot of
where,
people are like that.
yeah, it's crazy. And I don't know where it comes from. And I always say, like, how can I not do this quality of work and plan
Mhm.
it in a week early? Why do I always have to be starting like the very last minute the night before?
Well,
Yeah.
people always say, and I say it to myself, if you give me 30 days to do something or give me 30 minutes, it'll both get done within that time. You know?
Yeah.
The pressure works for me too. What made you want to study psychotherapy? Because obviously you're studying college later in life. So, first, what made you want to go back? And secondly, what made you want to pick psychotherapy?
It's funny. I was looking at 2 courses. I was looking at computer science or counseling and psychotherapy.
Those are very different, Ian.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I have loads of ideas, but I just can't express them. Like I can't jump onto a computer and start writing code as much as I love to. And then with the psychotherapy, when I was younger, like I do believe in the process, but I've had some very bad therapists in my life. And I feel like with the whole addiction thing that when I was younger, I went to a psychotherapist and I felt like, well, he was a psychologist background, but that I thought rehab was for celebrities and he wasn't great. And I've had a couple of bad therapists in my life. And only later in life, I suppose, since rehab, I found, good therapists who were doing, I suppose what they should do. And like they're just the ones that I dealt with before when I was younger, I felt like they knew the textbook, but that's all. They didn't have the experience. They didn't have the congruence. They weren't they weren't very empathetic. They were just kind of, book smart and they were academics. But,
That
as
makes an awful psychologist.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it just seemed like they were interested in the money, to be honest with you. And like, I mean,
Mm.
I'm not saying it's a really, really well paid job or anything. And that's definitely the last reason that I'm doing it for. But I guess I just decided that, do I want to spend 4 years doing computer science or do I want to get into this psychotherapy, which I feel is my calling, because people like, I'd wanted to do either psychology, psychotherapy or life coaching. And people were kind of just saying, you should just go for it, really. And I guess that's why I went for it.
So talk to me about your first time experiencing going to a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor. How old were you?
Well, I guess I went in my teens, and that was kind of like, this family type thing,
Mhm,
like
like a
with
family therapist?
yeah, it was like with schools, like, so I would see one and then my parents would see the other, and then, like, we would all have a little meeting, and that was to do I did mention to briefly previously that, when I went into rehab, ultimately, the psychiatrist, he wouldn't allow me in straight away until he had me on medication because he suspected I had ADHD. So I had behavioral problems in school, and this is why we kind of needed a bit of mediation and a bit of a, third party support. And I didn't find it great. I know therapy has always been around, but back then therapy wasn't as mainstream and mental health wasn't very important, you know. Mental health to want to
It was
talk
kind
about
of
your mental
weird.
health.
It was a little
Yeah.
taboo,
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
going to family therapy. Our whole family is going to therapy. What
Yeah,
is wrong with us? Was kind of
absolutely.
the thought,
Yeah.
you know?
I was what was wrong with us in this scenario, but
Mm,
it was not okay to talk, it was, as you say, taboo. You couldn't talk about mental health, you couldn't talk about feelings. They didn't say back then it's okay to not be okay. That's the new thing, but back then, like, pull yourself together and, grow a set. That's the shit. So yeah, so it was really taboo. And then I suppose we didn't kind of stick with it, and it wasn't something, like the teachers weren't equipped to deal with mental health either. Like, there was no kind of, they just didn't have the experience either. A lot of the people, like the teachers who taught in school when I was a student, like the stuff that they would have went through when they were in school, which is why they were kind of like, looking at us, but what's wrong with you? Not saying they had kind of little regard for us, but they just thought like that things were so much better for us than they were for them. So why
of
would we
course.
have any complaints? But then I suppose when I left school, cocaine is drink is like big, big in the culture. Back then, it's worse now. Somebody would always have some in the pub, even if you went and tried to avoid it. And like, I was having blackouts. I couldn't remember the nights. I was waking up in the next morning and in an awful way. And then I just said, I can't keep doing this. And this was when I was 19. And because, say I had gone to the therapy in school, I said, look, maybe I'll try this again. And so then I tried it again and told your man that it's like the psychologist, the problems that I was having, I had no confidence in this guy. And then I just went back out there, just continued doing what I was doing, whereas I told him, like, look, I'm at the depths of despair here. Basically, I had health insurance back then. I didn't know that they would have paid for rehab for me. As I said, I thought it was out of my reach, that it was for celebrities.
Yeah, you don't know exactly. Like you said, rehab to you was more this glamorous celebrity thing. Because back then, yeah, it was Lindsay Lohan, it was all of them. That's all you ever heard about rehab. It didn't seem very accessible.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's it. It didn't seem accessible at all, but we didn't even do any work around it. Like, I told them, I said, "Look, it's every night." And then I said, "When I'm in work, like, I'm going in, I'm smoking weed, I'm getting stoned," and then that was it for a few years. And then I guess kind of it's just a vicious cycle. Like, this continued for years, going out the weekends and living for the weekends. I do shift work, so even during the week, like whenever I could find like somebody to drink with, and sometimes, like, I was drinking on my own and then, like, taking coke on my own as well, so it just
Wow,
really
you know it's
escalated.
bad when.
Yeah,
Because cocaine is a party drug. You wanna do it with people, so if you're taking that alone, just on your off days, I'm sure that's when you
yeah,
recognize this is getting a little crazy.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. When I knew it was getting really crazy was, like, say, 'cause I smoked weed for years in school as well, and I think, like, that's why the ADHD was kind of masked a little bit because it kept me
It
calm, it kept me
yeah,
sedated.
it kept you, like, lower, more
Yeah.
calm, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not gonna say it's a great thing, but at the end of the day, if you know, it's over here, it's criminalized. You're not allowed to smoke weed, but basically
Oh, it's legal in Canada.
yeah, I
Like,
know, and that's
I live on top of a weed dispensary.
really?
Yeah, there's
Well,
one underneath my condo building.
crazy. It's nothing, it's
What a
not
different world, hey?
yeah, exactly, and I think, like, over here, it's crazy that, like, I could go to the press and I could take out aerosols or different things, glue, and I could go up to the mountains in the autumn. I could go up and get mushrooms, and it's like, but yet they have this, it's made illegal, and it's all, like, black market stuff. The criminals are making
Mm.
millions and millions of euro, and then when people are going to criminals to get their weed, they're also,
It's
"Oh, do you want a
laced
bit?"
with everything.
Yeah, well, oh, that's it.
It's
It's
scarier.
yeah. So to be able to talk about it, boy, I was smoking it for years, and I always felt that, like, it's not as big as a problem as they're making it out to be. Obviously, it's illegal, but I did feel it calmed me down, and that I did enjoy it. But the whole side to it is, like, everything that comes with it, and that, the people are getting it off. And what I found for me is that even if I tried to stay away from it, then I'd have somebody to be ringing me up, "Oh, can you get me some weed?" And I'm like, "No, I'm trying to stay off it
You
myself."
couldn't get away.
I couldn't get away,
You
and the
and it comes with the crowd you're hanging out with. Not to
yeah,
sound like such a boomer right now, but when your social groups are linked and that's kind of what's bounding you together in a good way, it's hard to get away from it.
absolutely, and
Mhm.
that's the problem as well. Like, I was getting weed for other people, and then I was like, "Ah, sure, I might as well get some for myself." And then the people are getting the weed off. They're like, "Do you want to get do you want a bag of coke as well? Do you want some sniff? Do you want some this, that, or the other? Do you want some ecstasy?" So that's the problem with having it criminalized. And in Portugal, they're actually doing a lot to decriminalize it over there. But I guess for me, like, I was on it for years, like, going into work, going into school even back then. But I guess for me, it became a real problem when you're actually, in work. So one day, say I'm in work and I'm stoned, and then people are like, "Jesus, you're an awful waster. Will you do a bit of work? Will you do something? Get motivated?" But they wouldn't know. Then next week you're in on cocaine, and they're all, "Geez, you're a great worker. You are a brilliant worker. Wow, you just don't stop working." So it's like one extreme to the other, and that's when it became a real, real problem for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and
So take me all the way back. Paint your childhood picture for me. What kind of upbringing did you have?
good, yeah, yeah. No, no,
Okay.
no problems. As I said, it was just all kind of few behavioral issues for me, like,
Yeah.
kind of,
You
guess,
were
with, like,
adopted, but
yeah,
were you an only child or were you adopted into a family with other children?
adopted into the family with my sister. So
Your
I have
biological sister, they adopted both of
no,
you?
no,
Oh,
like, I
no.
have adopted sister. She's 2 years older than me.
And she's adopted as well. What a cool dynamic.
Yeah, yeah,
You and her, like, are experiencing the same things.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
they adopted you
absolutely.
at 6 months old? They already had her for a couple of years.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool. And they never had any of their biological children.
No,
What a beautiful thing.
yeah. Well, it's like one of the guys out of rehab as well. He was at 6 months adopted, and they reckon he had the ADHD as well. So
Yeah,
there's some.
talk to me about that. You said there's some kind of correlation.
Yeah, well, this is only a new study that they're doing, like, recently, to say that there is a link between, like, being adopted, like, at a later stage, and kind of not having the link with a mother, basically. They're not even saying it's, like, it's not adoption, even with surrogate parents, that if it's, say, if a child is in the biological mother's stomach, and then the surrogate parents are going, listening and putting their head to the stomach, and, like, there's still that connection. So to have that and that kind of continuity from, you know, I don't know, as I said, it's still fairly new, but to have that kind of connection, I guess adopted at say 6 months, you've been taken from the biological mother to the foster house, and then to your home, your forever
There's
home
a
and
there's
stuff.
a there's a disconnect as a newborn.
Exactly. So I
Mhm.
suppose that's what they're looking into at the moment. They're saying even things like to be breastfed. So there's all this link with ADHD, and with the ADHD, there's a link between that then and, having an addictive personality. So, like, for me, when I was in rehab,
Interesting. The
the guy,
ADHD or the being taken from the biological mother so early?
but they're saying, like, basically, so some people would have ADHD because it's in the family, like, biologically. So for me, that could be the scenario. It could be biological, or it could be the fact that, say, I was adopted, then I was in foster care, and then it was 6 months, like, in the formative months before I
Right.
family.
And these studies are saying or alluding to that someone with this upbringing right from birth can tend to have an addictive personality.
Yes, exactly. But it's interesting because, like, say ADHD could be hereditary, right?
Mhm.
But for me, say it might not be hereditary, but then it could have developed in me. So if I ever have any children, then they might have it from birth.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it
Wow, the
is.
body is so interesting.
It's all very new. They'd only started doing it when I went into rehab in 2019. That we were the first kind of part of their little study group, and obviously that rehab center has linked with the other rehab facilities. I say back to childhood.
You had a
I found,
fantastic upbringing.
yeah, and it was great, but I just found I had personally had trouble fitting in, and it wasn't anything to do with anybody else. It was just my own struggle, and then other things of like, Superman, the way Clark Kent arrived in the egg
Mhm.
on planet Earth. I wonder things like that. Like people would say that to me as well because like they think I'm a bit mad, like a bit out there, and that's why I didn't need drink or drugs anyway. Because they still go out and have great time, but they're like, "You're mad. You're from another planet." So I
You
would,
just have a lot of energy.
yeah, but I would think I was like, "Am I from another planet?" Nobody knows, because there's a lot of stuff going on in Ireland at the moment with these mother and baby homes. So the
What is
mother and
that?
baby home, basically, the mother and baby homes, they were actually in existence when I was a child. So say if a young mother, say a young expecting mother, so she's pregnant, but she's got pregnant out of wedlock, right? In Ireland, it was really strict Catholic
Mhm.
country back then. They would
Yeah.
send her off to a home and they would tell the neighbors, "Oh, she's gone to, she's moved for a job in England, but she's gone to one of these mother and baby homes." So the nuns used to exploit these young mothers. They used to take all laundry in from hotels and different places, and the mothers would do all the laundry and wash the clothes and iron them and press them. And then basically when the mothers had the baby, they would sometimes take the baby off and sell the baby or else put the baby up for foster care. There was a good show. I missed it last week, but there's actually one of the ex-presidents of Ireland. There was a guy, Eamon de Valera. Well, his son was involved in selling babies and he used to tell the mothers that were buying the babies. So they would walk around with a pillow in their jacket and he would tell them to tell their neighbors that they're expecting a baby so they didn't get suspicious when he sells them the new baby, when he steals it. Well, not steal, well, it is.
It is
But
stealing.
exactly, but there was money involved, so he would give the money from the families to the nuns, and then he would take obviously his money out of it, and then they would just show up with the baby. And then it was like, they're like, "Oh, we just had a baby." Woo." But in reality, that baby was robbed from a young mother who was in a child and baby home.
Is this still happening in Ireland?
No, no,
No.
it
So
stopped.
when's this? Back in, like, the '70s, '80s? Before then?
Stopped in the 90s. It stopped in the 90s, but it was on a smaller scale, and
Yeah.
there was less exploitation involved, but back in the '60s, '70s, '80s, '70s, '80s in particular, really, really bad, They were called the Magdalene laundries, but I'm not you just don't know because, like, I don't know that the maternal mother, the biological mother,
You
that
don't,
way, and
of yours.
I don't. So part of
Okay.
me would for no, not for those reasons, but I went to a good school, like a normal primary school. Everything was fine, and secondary school, and we didn't get bullied or anything like that. And I would never bully anybody either. Like I don't no time for that sort of people. But I just felt I didn't fit in. When I was 14, the first time I was offered weed, like people, like say people in your group, their older brothers or sisters might be trying it, and then they might get a bit, and then our group is trying it, and then how kind of the ripple
Well, I
effect.
started drinking and stuff at 13, 14, so yeah, I know exactly
Yeah,
what it's like.
yeah, exactly. So
And
that's
it's
kind of
a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're hanging around with the wrong crowd," and it's like, what happens when every crowd is doing it, you know?
yeah, absolutely, and that is what happens. Like every crowd is doing it, and then I suppose
And you're just curious at that age.
exactly really curious. But I suppose as well, what I find is that say a lot of the people that didn't maybe smoke or have a drink, you're just like, I know, like say I was obviously a little bit quirky, a bit weird, but like these guys were kind of like straight laced, like no personalities, no fun, bookworms, people that I just wouldn't have mixed with. So like the kind of people that I did kind of gel with or get on better, or that I was kind of drawn to, like they would have all been smoking weed and drinking, and so it was hard to
You were
avoid.
having more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one guy when I was younger, he said, like a neighbor. I told him I didn't like him, it's all right not to like people. I told him to get out of my garden, and he was like, "This is not your garden, you're adopted." Yeah, and then my
You're
father
so mean.
yeah, and my father heard this, so obviously he ran him out with the garden and told him that it was my garden, and that he's not to set foot in it again.
There's a big piece of this story that we're missing right now. We started talking about you being a teen and smoking weed and partying, and now we're in present day, but there was a huge section of the story missing. You became addicted to drugs and alcohol. You went to rehab. You came out of rehab. Bring me back. Bring me back to those stories. I'm like, this is a big part that we're missing. So
Yeah,
how did you, and this might be a very ignorant question, but how did you become addicted? What does that process look like? Does it just happen overnight and you're like, "Fuck, I'm addicted?"
no, well, it's a slow process. I guess for me, it's like things were going tickety boo, and life was kind of all right. I settled down. I was in a relationship, and we were going out about, I suppose, 3.5 years at this stage. And then in the like, obviously I work in the airport, and then I was actually getting bullied, right? I didn't know how to deal with bullying, right, back then, which I would now, because we weren't equipped or empowered by our employer. So it was getting bad, and like my family knew, like say my sister and my girlfriend knew, and they were just like, "That's not on." And other people were saying that's not on, but I suppose there's a lot of like I don't know if it's a bystander syndrome,
Yeah.
but people kind of stepping back, and I was like, am I blowing all this out of proportion? And it wasn't feeling right. And there was one night like where we got a bit of news at home, like a bit of bad news, and I said, "I'm not going into work tonight." My family said, "I just go in, the best place for you." And it wasn't about the news necessarily, but it was like, say, letting that sink in and then going in and having to face this individual. So basically that night we had a bit of downtime, like I was on my lunch, and I was on my iPad, right? And then he walked by and swiped the screen. Then next, it's like he puts his arse up in my face and he farts right in my face, and I done nothing. Didn't retaliate, but I was fuming. Inside I was fuming. Then later on that night, I was signing off on my jobs for work, right? Because we have to, put our time in. I was doing this. Next of all, I'm looking at the screen, all the stuff I'm after writing is all disappearing. So then I kind of turned around, looked, right? And then I just powered off his computer. And then at that point, when I powered off his computer, like I got lured in, like this is the third time in one night that he's after trying to push my buttons. And as I said, this is going on months, months, months. And I never retaliate, and I'd asked a few times, I was like, what's your problem with me? A couple of other lads who were also the victims of his behavior were also, saying to me, what do we do? But the major problem with this person was that his behavior was passive aggressive, So one time really aggressive and hostile. Then next minute you're going for your break. Oh, can I come and get a sandwich with you? And you're like,
Ugh,
yeah,
toxic.
yeah, absolutely. And it was a horrible, horrible place to work. So when that happened, when I powered off his computer, next of all, he's trying to reach behind my desktop to pull the power out. And as I reached behind the desktop, I actually found a can of deodorant. I remember what was going through my mind. So we picked it up and I found it was empty. Then I tried spraying him in the leg. And as soon as I tried spraying him in the leg, boom, turned around, headbutted me in the face, right? So I
Holy
landed
crap.
face in my mouth, yeah. And I had blood on my mouth. I went to the bathroom, not loads of blood. Like I'm not exaggerating, but I had a little bit of blood there. You could taste it. But you don't
Yeah.
want someone's face in your mouth. I went to the bathroom and checked it, lifted up my gum and I could see the bit of blood on it, raging. Then two of the other lads who I guess they were not necessarily my allies, but they were my friends at work. One of them said, like, because we were literally finished our shift, one of them had said to me, like, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I just don't know what I'm going to do." He said, "That is unreal. That's completely out of order." But then there was one of the guys, he checking in, he seeing was he all right. Then I had to ring my boss. I said, "Look, I can't work with this man ever again." I said, "I have enough stuff going on in my life without having to come into work and take this." I said, "I don't want to make a formal complaint." My boss said I could confide in him. Then I was swapped off this guy's shift. I was put kind of on another crew. I was basically, my boss told me, "Look, you have to reconcile," made me reconcile with the guy. Forced me
Ugh.
to go, yeah, forced me to go. And your man offered his hand, right? And I was like, forced me to go back on his shift. And then after all that, right, then the boss's boss, because I'd be a bit outspoken. I was a shop steward. The boss's boss didn't like me for that, so he wanted to use this as his so basically brought me in for formal investigation. But basically, because of the whole psychology behind it, the way I had been treated and put back to work with this guy, I couldn't speak up, so I had to go to the
Of course.
investigate and say, "Look, it's a misunderstanding. I just want to move on with my life, and whatever happened back then is in the past," and say all these stupid things like,
That you don't
Whereas
believe, you just wanna
yeah,
move past it,
yeah,
yeah. You're
exactly, like, and it's
this guy is still an idiot.
yeah, exactly, it's all there in the handbook, he should have been sacked, but people were saying to me at the time, "Oh, his wife is pregnant," and I was like, "That doesn't give him a reason to put his head into my face, like, you've been bullying me for months now," and,
Yeah.
you know, in hindsight, if I could go back, I would have went straight to the airport police about it and just called them up, that I wouldn't have went back into that office until they could separate everybody and get kind of
Mhm.
a proper statement, because I don't care, you know, if his wife is pregnant at the end of the day, and everything that I went through since, I've heard of other people being assaulted in the workplace and the perpetrators get sacked, and that's what should happen. That's what
Agreed.
happens in a decent place of employment. But it's, subsequently, it did turn my whole life upside down. So basically, the company decided after me not speaking up that I had my chance. Loads of people are getting involved. Do this, do that. Go to WRC. The union got involved. They couldn't win the case, so I got basically a 6-month final written warning for gross misconduct, even though they
You
had
did?
nothing. Yeah,
You didn't do anything.
do anything, right? But it's because the investigation procedure had to be evoked because of my boss made the complaint then, said there was an assault and all this. And so then after that, right, I appealed it internally. Of course, at this point, it was all taken toll big time on me. Like mentally, I didn't know at the time, like say ADHD, OCD, oppositional defiance disorder. Yeah, there's like usually the ADHD, there's other, you know, kind of problems with it as well. So and I didn't even know back then, but I always thought it was a bit OCD, but realizing now, looking back at this, that was a major problem that I could not stop thinking about what happened in work, the instant,
Right. It was
everything that
eating
happened
you
to
up.
me, you know, big time. The union brought this appeal to my company, an internal appeal to give them one last chance to correct what they're after, you know, coming up with, like from basically it was, you know, managers sticking together. So
Mhm.
then I basically had to go outside to an adjudicator, you know, in the Workplace
Yep.
Relations Commission. They eventually found in my favor, but it took them another 6 months because the adjudicator went off.
Whoa, so we're
Yeah,
talking a year later.
yeah. So
This
the
stalled.
adjudicator went off on sick leave as well, so I couldn't get a
Jesus.
decision. And when I found out the adjudicator was off on sick leave, I went off sick.
Right.
I'd started a project at home already, like I had a personal loan, you know, in my name, and then I wanted to finish the project because I couldn't go into work anymore. I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna do my little
Mhm.
project. So when all this messing happened with the airport and I got consumed with what was going on the airport, and then I had to go into the airport and deal with investigations, I couldn't do anything. Like I was mentally crippled. You know, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Like life just came to a halt. So I said, I'm not going into work. Like I was getting sick, you know, actually like sick, physically sick in the
Of course,
mornings.
stress will make you physically sick very
Yeah.
quick.
And I said, like, that's what my family were saying, like, and my girlfriend, "Oh, just keep going into work." And I said, "No, I'll just get this
Mm-mm.
finished, rent the house out." I said, "I can't go in there. It's destroying me. It's killing me. Like, it's making me sick." Because she could hear me in the mornings getting sick, and like that would, you know, we were talking about mental health earlier. That I wouldn't think that something like this could have had such an effect on me.
I know.
But then after that, with the whole, say with the, because I have this loan that I have to pay back, and then like I'm on sick pay, then all of a sudden my sick pay gets cut as it does after 3 months. I couldn't afford to do anything anymore, you know, so I had to rent the
Couldn't
room
afford to
out.
live.
Exactly, couldn't afford to live, and I had to rent the room out. Then I rented it out to an old friend of mine. He was using the cocaine like every night, flat out.
Mm.
And then I started dabbling it. Then it got worse. Then I was getting coke all the time, basically, off people I knew, and then it was always there. And then once that happened, ultimately things were really bad. You know, like I guess I kind of had to decide to go back to work. And the first night I went back to work, I was like, right, this is a fresh start. Like, because I forgot to say, so that the Workplace Relations Commission, they found in my favor. So we got vindicated. So the warning was lifted off my record. And at that time, I had done therapy throughout being sick. Like, I'd done therapy with the employee assistance program. And that was over the phone, which I did find really, really effective, you know. So I was feeling ready to go back to work. By the time I went back to work, I suppose, you know, the cocaine addiction had its grip on me. And then that's when I was saying I was going in, I was using it in work, and you know, like my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now, gave me the ultimatum. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue this new lifestyle that I have, or am I get back to focus on the relationship? And I decided it's going to be my own man, you know. And then that was obviously the worst mistake I could have made because it went from bad to worse, you know. Then I was at rock bottom.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking too, and you're going through a breakup and which is gonna lead to more drugs and
It
Wow.
was mad because I was saying at the start, that I was going into work and I was actually using, get a
That's when you
drink.
know it's bad.
Yeah, that was bad when I was in work and I was
So what time period is this? How many years ago was this? How long did this go on for?
so I guess it was rehab in October 2018,
So how
and I
long
did
was the drugs going on before that? And was it just cocaine or was it cocaine, alcohol, weed, everything?
everything,
Anything and everything?
anything and everything. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Walk me through a day, like, how much drugs are we talking? Like,
Well,
you
like
wake up, are you doing drugs as soon as you wake up?
like, I can't think of when the thing in work happened. I just know that I was in rehab in 2018 and that the problem with the major addiction was probably going on about a year and a half. So I'd
Okay.
say, just say 2017 anyways.
So, when you were at your worst, what does a day in the life look like? Are you just home doing drugs all day? Like, what's happening? But you said you're going to work.
Well, like,
Where are
so
you
when
getting the money for all these drugs? Cocaine's very expensive.
yeah, well, it was work. You see that the loan I had, right, kept topping it up. So I
Right.
kept up loans.
And you
Then it
got a loan to build the tiny house? Is that what happened?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then, like, I was just kept topping that loan up, and then it came to the
Right.
stage where I eventually got the house rented. So then I'm living in the tiny house, and the house is rented, so I'm just getting by, but then
Wow.
topping up the loan again, and I'm showing the bank's receipts to say that, "Look, I just need to finish this, and here's the receipts, and this is my little plan." Actually, they weren't really having the banks, so then I had to get my parents to go guarantor on the
Yep.
loan to say that, "Look, I'm solvent, I'm good for the money." And so kind of come 2018, like I'd be getting up, like, going to work, but like I'd be using in work. And then, I mean, so if I was off, say the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I could stay up all weekend,
You'd
and I
be
might,
up the whole 3 days.
yeah,
Holy crap.
I might see my friends in the pub on Friday, and some friends might visit me on a Saturday or something, like different friends. But then, like, I would stay up the whole time. Like if I went in and I was really tired, I could be in there like literally not able to move, like, basically doing hardly anything. And then on
Wow.
the other end of the spectrum or the other end of the scale, then I'd be in there on coke. I'd be doing loads of work, I'd be doing everything.
Poor body and nervous system is getting
No,
effed up.
yeah, crazy. So, so
The fact
then,
that you're
but
staying up for 3 days on a weekend, that's
yeah,
crazy.
I know. But from the last time I was off work, like I didn't go to sleep once. Like things were so
Right.
bad, like
Things were starting to spiral.
yeah, exactly. They were spiraling so bad. So I was saying to myself, I says, I don't want to go in there anymore, and which I actually, it didn't happen straight away, but I kept using. I didn't tell my family. I didn't go in. A couple of people knew, a couple of friends said, like, you need to get help. But I just didn't feel that it was that bad. As I said, sure, in my head, I was still like, I had it sorted. Like everything was grand. There was nothing wrong with me. I don't want to go in and work for the establishment or, bow down to this capitalism. These were things that I had, like, I was like, I'm sorted. I don't need a job. I
Right.
have rented, boxed off. I'm great. So then obviously things were really bad when it came to the point, right, where I sold all my belongings, like sold the TV, sold all the furniture, everything. Then my family come up and they're like,
Or money? For drugs? Oh,
'cause I mean, the
wow.
the loan was gone, like the house wasn't,
Right.
all my furniture, PlayStation, everything gone. I kept the laptop, lucky enough, but everything was gone. And then my family were like, "Where's all your furniture? Like, what's going on?" I was like, just trying this whole minimalist thing. We don't need these possessions. Your possessions come to own you. Like, this is what happens, people. This is what's wrong with people. You're all mad at your possessions, your houses. You're crazy. And then there's me, like, with nothing. So then,
This
so
is
that
a
was,
little too minimalistic.
yeah. So that was fine, right? But then all of a sudden, I missed the payment on my mortgage and on my loan. And because the parents were guarantor on the loan, the bank actually rang my parents and they're like,
Oh.
yeah, you're guarantor on this loan here, so you need to pay up. And then they're like, What do you mean? What's going on?" So then that's when the whole thing started.
Seriously.
Yeah,
So
and
is
then
this the moment in time that your parents are getting involved and saying, "You need to go to rehab"? Is this the moment?
yeah, basically.
So
So
whose decision was it go to rehab, yours or theirs?
my dad brought me to the doctor.
Right away.
Well, kind of, we had a talk about what was going on,
Yeah.
about the furniture, about the money, about, that they had
They
suspected
knew
that
they knew something was up.
Absolutely. Well, they'd known for a while, but then they suspected that I was kind of bunking off work. And there was other things as well, but like obviously say when I come up to the house, my attitude that like they were
Right.
sick as
Well, you were
well.
exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. So we went to the doctor then and told the doctor, like I said, look, my dad was outside, obviously, I have to come clean with you that I think I've been using drugs all the time, like that I'm really bad, that, I'm messed up. And so, yeah, that was the turning point. That was the
Wow.
start of getting
So
into
so did you get, admitted into rehab right away?
No, because if you remember when I was saying that I had to be sedated first, I went to the counselor at
Okay.
rehab. So normally when you go to the counselor, he will admit you to rehab that weekend, depending on, the level of your problem, whether you're going to be an inpatient or an outpatient. So I went to see this guy. We didn't gel very well, to be honest with you, It was then he was speaking to my dad as if I wasn't in the room. And I was kind of
You
saying
don't
like,
like that? Like, you're an adult.
yeah. And I was like, what's going on here? Is this the check short gang joining forces and ganging up on me because they're both wearing check shorts? So basically, he sent me away, and I'm still going to these meetings, right, at this center, this rehab center. And other people are saying, like, I'm going to AA meetings and Narcotics Anonymous meetings and Cocaine Anonymous meetings, and they're saying, why haven't you been admitted? And I was like, well, I have to go see the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, then it was there and then he said, look, how would you feel if I said, I think that you might have, ADHD? And then he wanted me to take these tablets. So I was taking these tablets for months before I could actually get admitted to the rehab. And I was heavily sedated essentially. And my sister, she was saying, like, you're taking these tablets now, but they're just replacing one with another,
I
you
was
know?
just gonna say that. Like, it's just so fascinating that you get admitted to these rehab programs because you're on all of these drugs, yet they're just replacing it with another drug.
Yeah, crazy. So,
And didn't you say they were giving you antidepressants?
well, when I went in, like I was heavily sedated and I felt,
Do you think you need it to be heavily sedated?
I don't know. I feel like, say, it definitely things like reading a book. Like that's what he was asking. The psychiatrist was asking me before. He was saying, like, how do you feel? I said, well, I can read a book now. I couldn't do that before. Like I can't focus. I'm tuned in. And his point was that I would have to be like this to go in and to do a good program. Otherwise, I wasn't going to absorb anything. I would be just sitting there in the rehab for 5 weeks and my mind would be out on the street, which it did make sense to me. So like I went in there, right, and I done a good program, but when I got out, I relapsed within the space of hours, you know?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So because when I got out, I like, Shawshank Redemption.
Yep, love it.
Like the old man when he gets out, when he owns the crow, and then he doesn't know what to do, and then he ends up killing himself.
Yep.
I felt like I was after being in the Shawshank Redemption. I felt like I was after being in this prison, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether life would ever get back to normal. I was depressed then, but I didn't know it because this was a side effect of the antipsychotics that I was after taking. They make you depressed, basically.
Okay.
So I got out anyway, and I wanted to get out of my mind again, like when I was younger, So that's what I done. I relapsed and it was mad. I didn't tell anybody. It was just kind of like, oh, maybe this will sort me out. And then when it's inner system, obviously you want more and more and more. But then obviously I had to go kind of like through withdrawals again, like but just on a minor level because I'd only had a minor slip. So then I hadn't said anything to my family. And then I went up to my own house and I was kind of moving out my stuff up to their house, because they would prefer, and they were right too. It was a good choice because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't still be sober. I was kind of going up and cleaning up and getting my stuff ready to go up to their house. So I hadn't said anything. So I went to like a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that night and I told them that I had a slip. And so they knew like that this would happen or could happen, but they just didn't think that it would happen like within the space of a few hours. But it was good that like I got back to reality, but I was still depressed. Like I was messed up. When that happened, I had to ring the rehab center and tell them, look, I'm after having a slip. And then they sent me to this other place, which they were trying to recommend anyway. So they sent me for an appointment, which was speeded up because I was high risk now. She went to see her man, told him what had happened. And then he was saying, like, what these tablets you're on, like, these are really strong. I said, the psychiatrist reckons I'm ADHD. He said, they are so strong. He goes, I wouldn't like to see you on them anyway, to be honest with you. If you're coming in here, he said, like, I have ADD myself. And he said, I'm actually not taking anything. I just learned through mindfulness and meditation how to manage it. That he goes, they are crazy. He goes, but I'm not in a position to prescribe you medication or to tell you come off medication. At this stage, I was a shell of the person I was. Like I gained a lot of weight from the tablets as well and from eating loads of food
Yeah.
in the rehab. When I went back to, not aftercare, but I went back to see the psychiatrist, and then he put me on these antidepressants. And so then between these antidepressants and the antipsychotics, I was so low, I was so sedate. I just wanted to go to sleep all the time just to escape my mind. You know, I was living with my parents, but if I was out on my own, I would have wanted to escape what was going on. I'd be back using straight away because it was so difficult to deal with. I also owed money out. I couldn't get anything anyway, but because I was so low, I wanted to die. And then I was like, I owe this money. I have a debt for like a drug debt that like if I end up killing myself, then that fucking drug debt is passed on to my family. And I don't want that either, you know?
That's so scary.
Yeah. So they were things that I had like
How
eaten up
much are we talking?
like tens of thousands.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they will seriously find your family.
Yeah, yeah, but like
That's scary.
nearly 20,000, let's say.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? So how it happened so fast. That's what I'm saying. Between like
Well, that's what I'm saying there, that's like a 2-year time or year and a half time, like, that happens quick. That's a lot of
Mhm.
drugs.
Yeah, a lot.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. Well, so talk to me present day. So you've been sober now for, you said 2 years?
Well, the 15th of March was the when I got over the depression. Well, so I was in aftercare and rehab. So there's, AA and NA, so they're kind of spiritual.
Yep.
Then there is basically non-spiritual, it's called Life Ring. The rehab center didn't want me to go to Life Ring because it was non-religious. So
Is
I
the
had a little
religious one better?
I don't know, like, I don't
Yeah.
think so. I think Life Ring works for me anyway. I find it much better, and it's not to do with spirituality or religion, it's just to do with the structure, the way the meetings are structured. They're so much better, they're more interactive, they're more engaging, you know? So then I had another slip because slips happen, these things happen, right?
Well,
On
I'm
the
sure you felt
weekend.
like a bit of a coward. You're
Oh,
like, "I shouldn't be leaving."
yeah, yeah. And one of them told me, he said, "You're back to the start." And, then so one of the guys in Life Ring, he said, "Ian, that is rubbish." He says, "If you're on a journey of 1,000 miles," and he said, "and you're 800 miles into the journey," and he said, "and you take a wrong turn," he said, "you can't end up back at the start just like that." He said, "It doesn't happen like that." He said, "If you keep going down the wrong road," he says, "you will end up back at the start, and you can end up back at the start quicker than it took to get you where you are today." And he said, "But you're not back at the start." He says, "You took the wrong turn." He said, "You acknowledged it and you've turned back." He says, "You're doing great." He said, "It doesn't put you back to the start." And I was like, "Oh, thanks so much." And that meant a lot to me, because what happened in aftercare did get into me a little bit. Some of these facilitators have big egos, and a lot of the stuff which they've said to me and to other people is completely incorrect. It frightens me to think how bad I was when I was at my worst and like how quickly I could end up back at the start. I used to count clean time, how long I'm
Mhm.
clean and how long I'm sober, but I don't do that anymore. I know to some people it means a lot,
But
but
for you, I mean, if it doesn't mean anything, then whatever. It sounds like you're just going forward at all times.
it's funny like that. It did at the start mean a lot to me. But as I said, I just remember the date that stuck with me was the 15th of March. That day was like being reborn, and that was the most significant day to me. Like, it was unreal, to be honest with you. Like, I'd given up the antidepressants and I'd given up the antipsychotics of my own accord. What happened basically was like I was in the habit of being depressed. Like, I was clinically depressed, but that was to do with the effect that these specific tablets had on me. But then the neurology and, the neuroplasticity, like my brain, I
Yep.
just got into this habit. I was depressed, and that was the way it was always going to be. So on the 15th, my dad was doing great for me. He's giving me a lift into work nearly every morning and collecting me in the evenings to get me back into the habits. Obviously I was going sometimes on my own, but it was so hard to get back into the routine. And especially when I didn't have the energy, like I was so lethargic because of the tablets.
Of course.
So on the 15th, I was in work and I seen one of these guys who I used to work with in another department, several years before. And then he was kind of, "Oh, what's wrong with you? You don't look too great." And I tell him, I said, "Look, I'm after being in rehab. I'm on these tablets. Or I was on these tablets and I'm wrecked. I don't know what to do anymore at all." And then he's, "That's crazy." He says, "You used to be one of the most positive people that I've ever known. And to see you like this." And then he started telling me about this book called The Green Platform. So the guy who wrote it, his child had severe disabilities and the government were going to take the child's medical card. So which would have put the parents into poverty basically, that they had to pay for round the clock care for their child.
Wow.
So the father went out and fought for the rights for his child to have, access to, the proper healthcare. And then the father actually became a motivational speaker as well. But he was telling me about this book, and it really kind of struck me. It was great to see him, and and to remember that time where I did have such a positive outlook. But I said I was going to the church as well, and I was kind of, I was in the Our Father, and I was going, and I was in this prayer, and then all of a sudden, as I was praying, it was mad, like, because I'm not real holy, like born again Christian, but like, I am spiritual. But as I was in the prayer, all of a sudden, I came into the present, and the rumination stopped, like I had left the past and came completely into the present moment. And I was just like, it's gone, and it was like a miracle. And it happened in the church, and maybe it was a miracle, maybe with Christ, or I don't know, right? But that evening, so my dad collected me at 7 o'clock. And he'd only said to me a couple of nights beforehand, and he used to ask me when he would collect me, "How are you today?" And I'm like, "Oh, great. Oh, sorry." And then he's like, the next day, "How are you?" "Yeah, same, sorry." And there's nothing I could do. Like that's how I was feeling, to other people in the street, like you would ask me, like, "Yeah, grand, yeah." Where I did want to just say, "I'm not feeling great. I just want to die, to be honest with you, but I can't do it because my parents will be chased for all the money I owe, so
Mm.
sorry, I'm not great." But
You can't tell them that.
yeah, exactly. So he said to me the night of the Euro Millions, the big jackpot, he said, "If you won this 200 million euro, would you feel better?" And I was like, "No, sorry, sorry, no." So then this night, he came to collect me. He's like, "Well, how are you feeling today?" I was like, "Great. I'm brilliant. You wouldn't believe it. I met one of the lads I used to work with, and he was telling me this." And then I was like, I was in the church, and I blessed, and I had a prayer, and then like, "Hallelujah, I'm cured." So, but that's how it happened. I was so excited. He goes,
Oh my god.
then he's like, "Are you messing?" I was like, "No." So then I got home, and then he's like, "Tell your mom." They both kind of like, who is this person?" So that's why I remember that day. But like, when I went back to the psychiatrist after this revelation, this moment in my life, this turning point, and he was like, "Well, how are you today?" And I was like, "I am brilliant." And I was telling him all that happened, and he goes, "Hmm." He goes, "Last time you came into me, you were down here on the ground." And he says, "Now you're up here, you're just different people." He said, "I think you're, on the bipolar spectrum, to be honest." He said, "I definitely think there's a bipolar aspect to you." I was like, "Right." I said, "It happened at the church." I said, "This is a spiritual program. And you're telling me now that you think there's a bipolar aspect to me." So I was going to my aftercare as well in the evenings because I had that little slip. So they wanted me to kind of stay engaged with the rehab. And they were saying, "Oh, well, I think he's right. If he says you have a bipolar aspect to you, that's the truth." So on this occasion, he was giving me another prescription for more basically prescription drugs.
Wow, just one drug after another.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to keep it.
They were just peddling you one drug after another.
But when he gave me this prescription, they were saying, "Well, if he's prescribing you something, these are the facilitators. You really want to be taking what he's recommending for
And
you."
you decided to start questioning things, hey?
Yeah. So I kind of saying, "Do I really want this?" And then ultimately I did. I went and collected the prescription, and then I was like, "Do I really want to do this?" A night or two later, I decided. I said, "Look, I'm just going to take it." So after I took this, I think it was called rusperidone or rusperidone. I can't
Okay.
Respiridone. So after I took it, right, then I go on the internet. Then I start researching this tablet. I was like, Why didn't I do the research before I actually downed the tablet?" And then I'm reading, right, and then it's like, some men in America have lawsuits against the manufacturer because they've developed breasts. I was like, "What?"
High
Yeah.
estrogen.
So then I'm reading the
Wow.
word at this stage, and I was like, "I can't believe I'm reading this," and it's gone. So the next morning,
Some heavy, heavy drugs.
yeah, I was gone because they were so strong. So, but my alarm clock, but they would like, I leave my alarm clock away from the bed, so I try reach over to turn it off. I fall out of the bed. My big toe bounces straight off the ground, and I thought he broke it. Crawled over, turned the alarm. Yeah, it was the pain. I was like, "Ah." So I turned the alarm clock off. Then I crawl back into bed, check myself for breasts. Everything was off.
You think you're gonna get them overnight?
Imagine, well, that was the fear. So, but then
Oh my
because I had
god.
no energy, I never took them since.
Wow. So you
So
just went cold turkey and you think that's working for you?
yeah, absolutely. It was
Okay.
keep 'em busy. I mean, but there's people who've been in recovery for 5 years and
Right.
more. They've ended up going back, but it frightens me. It does. It's something that would scare me to think if I could end up back,
Right.
the way I was.
The fear of that keeps you straight.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and, like, of course, when meetings are back on, I might go to 1 or 2, but, like,
Yeah,
they're
just to kinda be around that community, I bet.
absolutely, but for me, it's college, and it's connecting with positive people,
Mm,
and it's like, because they say you're the average of the 5 nearest people to you, so you
they
need to be
do.
hanging around with 5 people who want to get ahead in life, not people who are kind of stuck behind. Like, I had to say, like, people who I was in the house with, who I was in rehab with, some of them have got in touch with me and, they're asking me this, that, or the other, ask me for tips or ask me for advice. And then you give some of them advice, tell them what you think, might be good for them. And then they go and do the opposite. Then they're ringing you again, looking for your
Ugh,
help.
I hate those people,
Yeah,
Ian.
I know. And then other ones are looking for money. Like, 1 minute they're like, let's go for a coffee.
Bitchy.
Then next it's like, "Oh, can you give me a loan?" So they're people you really, really have
Leeches.
to stay, yeah. So I have to stay away from those people,
Yeah.
unfortunately, as much as I would like to help bring them to where I am, but they don't
It'll
want help.
drain you.
Well, and
You can
that's
do it when you're in a bit more professional environment, when you're done your courses and
yeah,
everything, then you can help
absolutely.
them professionally.
Yeah, but that's why I wouldn't want to be a full-time addiction therapist either. Not saying that I could end up back like that, because good
But you
therapists
you
a lot.
could get sucked in, you seem like a very empathetic person.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Ian, your story is insane, and I think you really should write a book.
No, thanks very much.
You
I might
should,
think
and
about
I
it.
know there's so many parts we didn't even get into today.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, we'd be talking for the next week if we were to keep going.
I know you would. Well, Ian, to close it out, one thing I wanna ask you, if there's anyone listening today that's going through addiction or starting their recovery or rehab, any words of advice for them?
Well, I think to talk about your feelings and just that you're not alone. There's help out there, and just kind of stick with the winners. That's the important thing that I learned. Make sure you stay connected with the right people. I had to get away from the people I was involved with and the things, any triggers. You have to also learn to love yourself before you can love others. That's one thing that I didn't really do, and I was neglecting myself a lot, and I wasn't giving myself time to even think. It was just all go, go, go. As hard as it was to make that transition from where I was to where I am now, it's been very worth it, but and as I said at the time, like, thinking, I was on my own and, there was no help out there, but I just had to kinda to speak up and to speak to people who cared about me and that I cared about. So, I'm so glad to get to where I am today, and if anybody gets anything out of listening to me, that'd be great as well. I'd be delighted if
Well, Ian, it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. You're in a lot better place in life right now, and I hope it continues. So, thank you so much for your time today.
thanks very much for having me, Janelle. It's been great talking to you.